means I need Jim. Jim? You seem to be next. You got any welcomes and introductions you want to make?
We have a few guests here today. I'll let them introduce themselves. Dave?
Yeah, Tim Rush and Dave Homey with Gray Bar. Just mentioning security. We're a security distributor, security, IT, electrical, lighting. We've been with Jim Robertson, client last month. Love to do an assessment on your security, cameras at stations, parking lots. Dave's our kind of security guru, security and lighting guru. So if there's any questions you guys might have, we'd love to answer any here or down the road for you.
So you think we got some of those kind of risks?
I would assume, most of those students. Most probably, yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Ed. And you want to introduce yourself? Very good. Well, thank you. Welcome. And thank you all for coming.
Yeah, thank
by the
you.
way. Hope it's enlightening. And unfortunately, we don't have any awards or recognitions today, or do we?
Pending.
Pending. We have some pending things.
What does that mean?
Well, we got some
Later?
good news, but we got to get the paperwork on it.
That's right, that's exactly
You going to have it before the end of the day?
No.
No. We're going to get it squared away on that.
So are you through with the agency awards and recognitions?
Yes, it was a short
Okay,
story.
We're going to move into consent agenda, and I'll read them off. Item 1A, approval of minutes of the board work session and regular meeting on February 16, 2016, and work session on February 25, 2016. Item 1B, acceptance of financial statements, that is February 2016. Item 1C, approved settlement and release agreement with URS Corporation, cause number 2011-30066-211, that is U.S. Corporation versus Denton County Transportation Authority, 211 District Court, Denton County, Texas. Item 1D, modification to capital budget, Romanet I, Texoma Air Paratransit System bus purchase, Romanet 2I, Stadler Fleet emergency lighting upgrade. Item 3I, D3I, that is, Louisville facility study, including the analysis of light maintenance facility options on the rail operations and maintenance facility space requirements for administrative facility, that is multimodal facility, and requirements for brownfield mitigation at the rail O&M facility. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second? Any discussion on any of those? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposition by like sign. Abstentions, the same sign. Motion carries unanimously. We'll take each of the regular agenda items as they come up. 2A is approved resolution 16-01 confirming intent to accept transfer of Texoma area paratransit system buses as required by the Federal Transit Administration. Jim?
This is a follow-up item to last month's authority that y'all gave us to enter into an agreement with TAPS to buy 5 full-size buses. This agreement is a requirement from the FTA to fully consummate that transfer of vehicles, and we recommend approval.
Questions? Comments? Is there a motion for 2A? Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposition like sign. Abstentions like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Item 2B, authorize President to enter into an agreement extending the North Central Texas College contract for transportation services. Jim?
The DCTA currently provides service to students at the North Central Texas College. We link together the campus in Flower Mound and the campus in Corinth. We have a reimbursable contract with them that on an hourly basis reimburses DCTA for our cost. They are funding the capital assets as well, and this year the contract will be up. Christina, you're leading the effort on that and the UNT contracts. What we want to be able to do is we want to have the authority to extend those contracts. We anticipate them asking us to do that under generally the same terms, reflecting the cost increases with no risk to DCTA as an agency. We'd recommend approval. Staff recommends approval. Christina, do you have anything that I missed you want to add to that? Okay.
Are there any changes or material changes from the existing contracts?
We don't think so. We added a second bus this year, and so that's been successful. We haven't heard anything different. You haven't heard anything, Christina?
No major terms according to an email exchange.
if we have something significant, we'll come back with it. Part of this is that I wanted to demonstrate to NCTC the intent of our agency to, as we enter into that, negotiating the final terms, we have the intent to continue that process. So we'd recommend approval and appreciate your support. Thank you.
Questions?
A question for you. How are those buses marked? Are they still marked NCTC North and NCTC Center?
I think they are. I'll double check, because we talked before about having a,
We talked before, and I've had students, they don't know North from South. But they do know Flower Mound and Clinton.
I believe the head sign was changed.
I think we did.
Yeah. I believe-
Can we get back, I'll get back to you,
Okay,
Richard.
That's not an issue on this motion, but I'd like
Yes.
to follow up to make sure.
Because I remember we had that discussion, and I need to confirm that we,
Did you get your answer, sir?
I did.
Okay, good.
and all the feedback we get from NCTC is positive, and,
Okay, is there a
So-
second? This is item 2B.
Paul was the second. Connie made the
Questions?
motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposition by like sign. Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Item 2C, authorize president to enter into an agreement extending the University of North Texas contract for transportation services.
This is very similar to item B we just discussed. The UNT contract is up this fall. With this, there is, currently, the agreements are very similar with the exception of capital, that UNT has provided 18 buses into the mix for vehicles. They're going through a study right now with Nelson Nygaard to look at how they're going to ultimately do their bus system. They've asked us if we will extend the existing agreement for another, Christine, I think it's 2 years?
Yes, sir.
2 years to get to where they could, when they look at the final implementation plan. Now, what's going to have to be incorporated into the next agreement, not this current extension, but we've got to work out a long-term plan with them on capital replacement. UNT has come to us, and our discussion has focused around the university does not desire to own buses anymore. They want to roll that into a more reasonable bus replacement plan that we manage. I think it's extremely important that we do the service with the University of North Texas. The numbers are extremely important to our operation. It feeds our service. It's key to our train system. We'd like to extend that to TWU at some point. That's part of the plan ultimately, is how can we bring them into the fold a little bit more. That's a yet to be determined thing. But as and when we talk about 35W, we're talking about the A train, what are things that we can work in our plan to how to make the agreement with UNT for staff, faculty, and primarily students much better and continue the positive things we do. So any of y'all have any, Christina, Nicole, any thoughts, Jeff, we need to deal with on that other than I mentioned?
Got a question here?
It's a quick question. So is this agreement coming up to any kind of expiration, or is this extension just driven by their planning
It
desires?
actually it expires
August
this
31st.
August 31st of this year.
Okay.
And so they have come to us and asked, again, Christina's leading this effort, they've asked us to extend the agreement for 2 years so that they can buy a little, quite frankly, buy a little bit of time to get the final answer. They're talking about, they're asking questions about what the fee should be to the students, how that should be calculated.
So my point, we would be dealing with this one way or the other, right?
Yes.
Coming up next year.
No, we've got to handle it.
Can we reopen this within that 2-year period if we want to reach a different agreement that's
Yes.
suitable to both parties?
Yeah, there's a walk away. Typically, these things have some kind of withdrawal termination clause in it.
Yeah, because it's anticipated they will likely add a lot of service. So in the future, the contract will likely change pretty dramatically.
But we don't have to wait for 2 years for that to happen, is the question.
You know,
Happen within the next 6
if
months
we
or
reach
whatever.
mutual agreement,
Yeah.
we cancel this one and start a new one, modify the one we have. I mean, there's plenty of
But you'd
opportunities.
bring that back to us anyway, right?
Yes.
Anyway, so.
Yes. No, we'll keep you up to speed. This is really important. UNT is really important to DCTA.
So they're going to hold title to the buses that are there? Or they
They currently hold title to 18.
Yes.
There are 9 buses that are used for the service that we own, not we, I'm pointing me, we own, DCTA owns, and that what is the long-term number? And Christina made a good point. They're looking at increasing service. So that means we need not only to think about replacing the buses we have, but adding more buses to that service to meet their needs. And so all that needs to be rolled in to the plan.
But it is like, I'm sorry, to answer your question, it is likely that they do currently hold the title to those buses, so it's part of the negotiations and discussion will be, do we transfer those assets to DCTA and what is the arrangement there? So that will be one
So
of the
we would be
discussion
responsible for replacing those buses.
No,
As
the
they
contract would have to accommodate the replacement of the buses.
Okay, they would,
Yes.
okay. You had a question?
Yeah, do they have any, looking at the lead time for new buses, do they already have placement in line?
No,
for new
that's
buses?
another reason for a 2-year extension.
Well, we've got, it's about you probably think about a 24-month lead time. And one of the things that we don't want to do, if you buy 18 buses all at one time, you have brand new buses all at one time. You also have really dead buses at one time. And so we've got to look at a way to,
We're back in the same boat where we're refurbing them all at once and we're replacing them all
But
at
one
once.
great thing is we do have a nice fleet of very newly refurbished fleet that we can phase out with
That's right.
a new fleet.
yeah.
So do they have any spares right now, UNT?
No.
In their fleet?
They,
Okay.
no, that's it. We use the all 18. Now, we do incorporate, by the nature of our overall fleet, we have spares, you know, in the grand picture, but in the 18 buses it takes 27 buses to run the service right now.
But the COG TAPS buses can be used at UNT? Is that
Some
correct?
of them,
They-
not, the
they-
ones that you just approved, they could be.
It could be, I think keep in mind that part of the TAPS, let's not call them, the new buses we're getting, the new used buses, that's the best way to put it. New buses to us, yes. We've thought about a number of things, one of which is we're starting to see a greater demand for service in Louisville, and that it may be time to make the jump to a larger bus for Louisville, and this would be an opportunity to do that.
But
Yes, sir.
As we work with UNT, we will build a replacement program, and as Jim mentioned, having so that we're phasing out old buses at a staggered, phased approach instead of one big bulk, because they're not going to be able to afford 25 new buses at once anymore.
Get your question answered. Richard?
As we increase the number of buses, are we giving consideration to our bus maintenance facility's ability to care for it?
Well, yes, that's one of the things we're considering. The bus maintenance facility, if you'll notice when you go out there and take a look at it, that the bays that the offices are located in have a nice window that looks a whole lot like a garage door. And I mean, in all seriousness, it was designed to be, for the office space to be taken out at some point, replaced on another piece of the portion of the property to provide more bays of service if we need it. One of the things that we've looked at in the previous item that you approved in the consent agenda really had to do with the idea of parking vehicles and doing some of the light maintenance at the rail facility. So we achieve a couple of things. We cut out a lot of deadhead time, fuel cost, and wear and tear on vehicles, and it also pulls some of the demand out of the Denton facility, although I don't see putting in a bus wash, and we're not going to be able to do major maintenance work. That needs to all be, I think, consolidating that in Denton still makes a lot of sense. So we're going to need to, there's a lot of thought that needs to go into that, We're currently staging the Frisco buses out of Louisville right now. That seems to be working well. So it's an excellent question. We've had that conversation. We're trying to figure out the best path forward. Our facility is scalable that we have in Denton right now, and we can scale up should we need to. And so we feel like we have a good path forward. We've got to nail it down and get tighter on it, but I think that just as we look at how many buses we bring in and the work it's going to take, it's going to be important.
Other questions? Okay, it's item 2C. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
The second? Any further questions? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposition by like sign. Abstentions same. Motion carries unanimously. We're down to 2D, which is authorize president to enter into task orders under existing on-call architectural engineering services implementing the Louisville facility study. Jim?
This is a companion item to item 1D3, which has to do with which was the capital budget, to look at expanding our, looking at what to do in Louisville with 3 elements. One is the light maintenance facility. How can we implement something at a fairly low cost, short term, and then maybe long term, what the best plan is for staging and operating vehicles out of the rail O&M facility in Louisville in lieu of taking them all the way up to Denton. Could that be fueling? Could that be cleaning? We've already got bathrooms. We've already got office space there. So there's some things we can leverage our investment to make that happen. And we've got some space on the east side of the road that could also be used inside the fence. That's one element. At the rail O&M facility, we've briefed you before. We did a study to look at some of the, our site is not pristine by any chance. It's 2 elements. It has some things on the surface. It has some drums and tires and things that we need to assess. We've looked at the south half of the property. We have a good handle on that. We don't have anything horrific, but we have some things we need to clean up. We're going to assess the north half, see what that looks like. And then the other part is kind of find out what we need to do to assess the landfill that's on that portion of the property also. Very interesting as you look at a series of photographs over time, aerial photographs, and how farmland, lakes and quarry filled in with looks like construction material. And so we need to assess that. And so that's part of what's happening with this. And the third piece is, we've been in this facility coming up on 2 years. We have a 3-year contract with 2 1-year extensions. We've discussed the idea of having our own office space. Does that make sense as a multimodal facility, kind of like a DDTC South? And our office space, maybe at the Old Town Station. We need some help from an architect. We've got, and all this is on, we've got on-call agreements for all of these task orders. Same folks that helped us with this office and helped us previously look at a new facility to do that. Because if we're going to look at our agreement for leasing this facility, if it looks like we need to stay here longer than our term would allow, next year is the time to negotiate that before we go into our options. Let's see how we need to look at from that point. So this will give us a chance to not only look at what our needs are, package a grant to try to get it paid for, and then move forward with that. That should also help us with the development around some of the stations where we put this, and it could be very positive. So we're looking at, Christine, as I recall, it's a cap total of $100,000 for that.
Yes.
We've done the budget transfers also. Those are with the capital budget item that we put together. And Christina, help me fill in any gaps.
I would just say the only other point is that we are working closely with the city of Louisville as we begin the planning of the facility at one of our stations, likely the Old Town Station, but we will work closely with City of Louisville staff to make sure that what we do is closely aligned with their vision for the area around that station.
Would you all send me a notice of meetings on that? I'd like to attend some of them at
Yes.
Louisville, if you don't mind. Okay, you through with?
I'm through, Charles. And we recommend approval.
Okay, that's item 2D. I think I read it off.
Motion to approve.
Okay. Second. Any discussion, questions further? All in favor signify by saying aye. All those against, same sign. All abstentions, same. Okay, motion carries. We're down to 2E, I believe. Authorize
Go ahead, Charles.
Authorize President to enter into a purchase, lease, or license agreement with Huffines Developers, and that would be around the Heber Station, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Let me give a little bit of background, then I'm going to ask Christina to talk through a little bit about the exact request that has been made by Huffines. A couple of years back, near the Huffines Station on the south side, very significant apartment development. It's been very successful, continues to stay full. They keep expanding. The expansion keeps getting closer and closer to our station. And so a couple of years ago, I went to them, and we went to them, and said, let's make sure that when you expand this, that you make it easy for people to get from this apartments to our station. How can we do that? And as we've been talking over time, they've looked at different options on what development might look like and things like that. So what we wanted to do in this discussion is kind of frame it, is provide good access from from the Huffines development to our station, do so in a manner that preserves our future options for development and enhances the success of that development near our station. So I'm going to direct you to the agenda item, the piece in the back, and I'll cover how we actually implement this. But Christina, could you talk through what the actual request is that they have?
Yeah,
Jim,
so,
hold on. Electronically, it's 95
The
if
last
you're looking
page
at
in
it.
your-
Last page on your
Last
agenda.
page in your tablet.
Okay.
looks like this.
Okay, go ahead, Jim.
There are three components of this agreement between Huffines Developers and DCTA. One is their original request to have a driveway that goes through a portion of our undeveloped property. If you think about the Hebron station, we have the station platform, and then we also have a parking lot, and then we have a piece of property that we own that is not yet developed, but it's available for future development. So in order to provide Huffines with access to Lakeside Circle from their new phase development, they would have to cross our property. So working together, we did identify a great location to allow them that access on our property that will not hinder any future development. It's on the far west side of that piece of property, and you'll see that little driveway access there. That kind of fits their needs. And then, as Jim alluded, we both want to have a opportunity to have a pathway between their property and our rail station for bike and pedestrians. So adjacent to our undeveloped land is that very large power station. And if you look on the drawing on the right side over here, they have drawn a proposed bike and pedestrian pathway, which it actually just travels right along that power station, which again is not going to hinder any future development. In discussions with Huffines developers, we are very clear that with the bike and pedestrian pathway and the driveway, we wanted to make sure that we had both pathways lit to provide safe access for our bike and pedestrians who want to go from their development to our station. So the bike path will be lit as well as the driveway access. One other component is their encroachment, basically, of their rounded building. This building will be a multi-use area and have some retail with some office space and as well as apartments. It does, in order for them to have their perfect arc and have the completed parking on the other side of that arc, it does encroach a little bit on our property, but in a section that's a utility corridor, so again, would not hinder any future development opportunities. So all three components, it's a win-win for DCTA and for Huffines developers, and it does not hinder any future development. So as we move forward in the planning stage of our TOD opportunities at this station, all three components will remain out of the way for future development.
A couple things to add to this is that we framed the agenda item very broadly. There's interesting encumbrances on this property that happened. Part of it is that it was funded used federal funding to purchase this. This is the only part of our system. It was built as a bus facility, the only part of the train station network that actually has federal funding attached to it. That is an issue. This area, one of the reasons that the encroachment in this driveway don't really impact our ability to develop it is it's really through a 20-foot electric easement. And we've got to watch what encumbrance that easement placed on the property in terms of putting drives and things like that. Clearly not a building, but could it be a drive? And we've got to get those, the Huffines guys need to work that out. I want to look at the width of the sidewalk, make sure it's wide enough for us to get what we need. It's shown as 5 feet. Should that be a little bit wider? We need to talk to them about that. What we're aiming to do is a couple of things. As a minimum, I want to make sure that I have brought this item I want to bring this item to the board and make sure this is, again, it appears very reasonable to us. I want to make sure that these are actions that I cannot take unilaterally and will need the approval of the board to do. And so one is to make sure that you support this approach and this makes sense. We could do either, you could give me the general guidance you want to enter into an agreement, or I could bring this back to you once we finalize a number of these things if we need to. Timing is important for the Huffines guys, but this is an important thing, and we need to make sure that we're doing the right stuff. I am not going to enter into an agreement that jeopardizes our federal funding, gets us upside down with the FTA, ends up with something that everything we've seen does not interfere with our ability to develop this property or place another encumbrance on it. With this, it could be best to have it as an easement or a license agreement versus a right-of-way. There's a bunch of pieces that come into this. The sidewalk and the lighting on both the drive and over to the, that link the apartment complex, apartment development to our station, they would pay for. Okay? That's extremely important. That is the trade-off, is that they build it, and Pete and I were talking earlier about how do we manage maintenance. There's a lot of issues that go with that. We've got to work through a few things on that, but it appears that, and it's my recommendation to you, this is, in concept, a good linkage between the apartments and our station, trade-off for a small encroachment for their parking lot, and access for a driveway across an area we really can't develop is a reasonable thing to do. Yes, sir?
Question. You said that Huffines would pay for it. Does the property become DCTA's in full after it's completed? Those improvements?
That is what I believe is, and this is in terms of what we're thinking right now, that the sidewalk would either be on our property, whether it's on an easement so that they have a maintenance responsibility or not, is what we'd have to negotiate.
Right.
And then the drive and the parking, whether it's by license, if we retained it, if it was an easement or a license, we might retain it, but we effectively lose control of it once you put a driveway and parking on it. I mean,
If they put parking spaces, if we give them a license, they're gonna want that license to be perpetual. And so it's pretty likely that if we give them a license for the curb there for their parking, that it's gonna be for most part indefinite, so that when they go sell the property, the buyer will know he's got the parking.
Would we be held harmless?
Yeah, if we do any form of a license agreement, it require them to identify us and maintain insurance. One of the ideas I threw at Jim was on the hike and bike trail, we could grant them an easement for them to construct and maintain that hike and bike trail, so that we're not stuck with the capital expense or the capital expense replacement repair. So those are some of the ideas we need to flush out with them. Plus, we need to look at the Encore easement and see whether there's any problems with them encroaching into that easement area for the parking lot. On the clip for their access, it would make more sense if we could convey them to Fee Simple to that little corner, because we don't have any use for it. It's not going to be developed. It's not going to be future parking. But if the FTA is going to have a problem with us selling that little clip, then we could grant them basically an easement for a street across there. The same requirements, indemnification, insurance, maintain, and so forth.
Is there a security fence around that arc, or that perimeter?
no.
No barrier, so
Well, there's a wall around the power station.
Well, around there's nothing that prohibits you from going from the apartment complex to our station. And I might add, I don't think we should try to put a barrier up. We actually should be aiming to get people to come across there
that's exactly right.
and make it as easy as we can to get there to increase our ridership.
Yeah, I would assume that, Christine, as you look forward to developing that property, we could marry up any retail we want to do on our side with theirs.
Yes, and those are conversations that have been going on too. And what you don't see from this very honed-in rendering is on the east side of the property, it's very deep. So I know that what you're seeing here, the majority of the developments on the west side, which currently it is, but the phase extends further east. So that's why this bike and pedestrian trail will be beneficial to serve the east side of their development. And the sidewalk that is adjacent to the driveway will provide access for the other side of the area.
On this rendering, probably going to be 10% of that.
Oh, yeah, this is,
Where's the area of our property would be used for parking? I don't see it on here. I see a sidewalk, I
it's
see.
right here. There are 14 spaces in the curve.
But that's on the easement, Concord.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not our property.
It is,
That is our
the
property.
easement is on, is,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we had the underlying
That's the-
property.
I thought there was something else. That's all?
That's it. Now, what this property, if you remember some of the discussions we had in Planning and Development Committee, or Program Development Committee, is having this vacant land helps us if we ever did look at putting development near the station, because say we had something that developed on what is now a parking lot, the parking that's displaced could be over here. There could be development that's placed on the undeveloped property. There's a bunch of different options, and so we wanted to take that into account when we considered anything. So we've got the sidewalk moved to one side, we've got the drive moved to the other side to keep as much of the space available for the future. And if if you have no limiting beliefs, right, and you start thinking, how could this whole thing come together with what is a parking lot now could be something else, and look at maybe what happens if this station actually had access from the other side of the track, and you say, well, what if parking was on the other side of the track? Then the picture starts getting really, really interesting. Yes, sir?
So you said they pay for 100% of the improvements, and then there's a long-term maintenance agreement.
That's yet, that we got, the
That's
paying for the
proposed.
improvements, we already have got worked out. The long-term maintenance is where we need to send Pete the nice guy to go help us with.
Who pays for the lighting, for the
We-
energy?
Christina,
That's one of the things that we have to,
they have put that in. The construction is theirs. We've got to look at the long-term maintenance. These are all the things that we have to sort. Again, this is a work in progress to get where we want to end up. The guidance that I get from the board in terms of your authority and the limits to which you give it to us will guide that discussion. Again, yes, Alan?
Well, before my little comment, I definitely think we just need to give you authority to go do this. But having been involved in the Community Development Corporation and the trails for years and years, just as part of your negotiation, a 5-foot walkway is a pedestrian path. It's not a bike path. That's got to be at least 6 feet wide to be considered a bike path as well. And you really don't want a bike hitting a pedestrian and then thinking, oh, well, they're on DCTA land, we're going to sue you.
well, you know what's interesting is I thought that was an 8. Discussions that we had were 8 foot.
Yeah.
And so when you said 5, I looked and I was like, gosh, I can't see that. So that would
Eight
be,
would be really
that will be
preferred.
discussed.
6 would be very borderline, 8 would be preferred, but a 5-foot wide is simply a pedestrian trail. not a bike
I would
path.
encourage, if you have a suggestion, and I think, is 8 what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Very good.
Okay, I've got several.
I'm ready, Charles.
That you haven't heard yet, as a matter of fact. I think you need to determine what's a deal killer and what's not. I really like what is the southmost or the bottom of this map, that connectivity down here. I think it's very important to us. That path is, we figured out a while ago, is 600 plus feet to the train. How important is that? I mean, are we going to assume more liability, more maintenance, or whatever, to have somebody to walk all the way from the apartment 600 plus feet or whatever it is to the train? So I think they may be looked at two different pieces. I don't know. You just may consider that. Is that one, if that northmost, the top of the page, if that one's not acceptable, is that a deal killer? I don't think so. So I think we look at it in two different pieces, perhaps. The limitation on liability, I heard that said at one point in time. We certainly have to have that in this whole process. The easement holder approval, are you taking the point on that?
It will be handled.
We need to look at it. We don't even know what it says.
I would say, Charles, instead, before we assign to anybody, the question is, what are the encumbrances on the property that we need to address, both in terms of an easement and in terms of the federal finance?
I think you just need direction from the board.
I
You know,
understand.
if you like this idea, we've got to put all the pieces together. and
I'm not
figure
saying
out
we
how
do it
works.
today, we're gonna vote today, but you will be looking at that
Oh, yeah.
easement.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No, we have to
Because
look
we
at
haven't
the,
seen it yet.
no, we
No,
have to look at the easement, the federal piece, and make sure that happens. I do think that the connection, even albeit 600 feet, approximately, a connection from the apartments to our facility that's lit and comfortable to take is really important.
So you think there's an issue there might be an issue with Huffines if, in fact, we wind up with this one here and this is impractical?
It would be an issue with me.
An issue with you?
Yeah, I really, I mean, I'll follow the guidance of the board. My recommendation to you would be that if we bifurcate this, a fundamental tenet of the recommendation that we have as a staff is that the trade-off of the trail, that connection, for the sliver of parking and the drive access is a reasonable trade-off. And that we gain value from that, and they gain value from it.
Okay,
If
that's all
we
the questions
separated,
I
it would
have.
have to be, probably have to be a
I've
cash.
gotten answers.
Have to see some money
Anybody else?
engaged.
Mr. Wilk, how long is that, 5-foot sidewalk along that long, the right-hand side of the page, how long is that?
Looks like it'd be about 300 to 350 feet.
That's to our property, right?
Yeah, that gets you, no, that gets you to the edge of the parking lot.
Yeah,
And
about
then-
100 yards.
Yeah.
And how
About
big is
100.
that triangle of undeveloped property? What's the size of that roughly?
Oh, I
3
don't,
acres?
probably about 3 acres.
And that's probably gross of easement, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Jim, you had another one?
Will you receive and help develop the standards? And will you approve those, or you bring those back to the board for all the standards that are, what they're proposing?
In terms of the,
Finishes, all that?
well, the only finishes we're gonna see, are gonna be the lighting, really the width of the sidewalk.
Yeah, I just think that's down in the weeds, we don't have to get into that. I mean,
Well, we're gonna follow, we're getting pretty good at building trails.
Yeah.
And I
think that's
concur
what
that
we're
5
doing.
feet's not wide enough, and we've built, like, closing in on, gonna build 21 miles of it, so we can figure out 300 feet. I think we
I
can,
would think so.
we'll probably get pretty close on this one,
Yeah, yeah. I would
But
support that.
having a sidewalk that follows, Christina was caught this one when we were going through this, is that the sidewalk that parallels the driveway is important too, to get them out to the street. Because as part of the bigger picture, how do we get people in and out of that? And where they are could be important in terms of how they get to the station or to the parking and how that goes.
And from a regional level, as we discussed, the extension of our A-Train trail, our rail trail, there's a lot of talk in the region about extending it from Hebron down to Frankfurt Station. This very well could be a portion of that trail connectivity. The alignment hasn't been decided yet, but this has been a discussion as well.
Well, since they're paying for it, then why don't we have them go ahead and put some landscape in there too? Trees.
Hard luck with landscaping, we were only down there for that.
I think,
Just saying.
well, I don't,
If they're writing the check, why not?
I think that we've got to be cautious, and this is it's a reasonableness test as we go forward, that with the landscaping needs to come irrigation, and
That
needs to
sounds
come
good.
long-term maintenance, and all those things. Now,
That's a good point.
I'm not gonna, this is an action of the board of directors. This is not, I only make recommendations on this one. I think that may be a bridge too far. It might not be.
Always ask.
And I think that we could discuss how we want that to be. So, it is our property. We may do with it as we see fit. Question is how we get someone else to pay for it. I can tell you we're getting really good at landscaping. You should see the
Aren't we?
pictures. You saw the pictures from what's happening at the stations. We're getting good at that, Jeff, you guys.
There's a price to pay for that.
And there is a significant price to pay for it, believe me. It is not cheap. So, we can certainly enter that into the discussion and look at the long-term idea of how we make this happen. I think lighting and the sidewalk are the two priorities in my mind.
And the sidewalk has to be the standards as if we would do a hike and bike trail that we currently have.
Okay.
And is there any way that could be paid for, reimbursed or something by a grant or COG?
I
at
think the
some
whole
point?
idea is that we're not spending any
They're
dollars.
paying for it.
They're paying for it.
We're not paying for anything. They're,
No.
whatever
Well, I
we
got,
work
I
out.
got that, but in
And I
terms
think
of
they would
additional funds
I
is
think
what
at
I'm
this
thinking
point, they
about.
would rather pay and get this done because they're ready to take action. So instead of waiting to find a grant and waiting to find money,
Right.
they would probably just rather just pay for it and construct it.
Okay.
Go.
I think I've got one more question, and
Yes,
then we'll call the question. Will there be some statement in this agreement where there's no restrictions on how we develop that property? I mean, it is as it is, right?
Let me rephrase it. There will be nothing they can add to the restriction of our property.
All right.
I'm gonna flip that around a little bit, is that we have what we have. And then
There won't be any
we
restrictions
will
on
not add, other than the fact that they exist, and that driveway and the parking, beyond that, there will be no encumbrances allowed.
Okay. I think,
Motion to approve.
is there a second? I didn't hear it.
Second.
Okay. Any further questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposition by like sign. Abstention, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. So
Thank
that
you.
takes care of all the action items. Jim, I think
We don't
have
need any
to go back
executive
into
session.
executive session. So let's just talk about a couple of things in the chair report. And then, Jim, you can talk about the president's report. The RTC, that's March the 10th, I think you may have known or been informed that we approved the 2040 plan, which is always a long, protracted, highly discussed piece. I've been through all of them from 2035 to 30 to 40, all those. And this one was a relatively quiet one in a sense, but still, it's long-term commitments. We got some things. We were denied some things. But I think what we need to keep in mind, and this came up several times when we were talking internally about how we approach that and what we asked for. The Metropolitan Transportation Plan, and you may already know this, but I'm going to repeat it, is financially constrained. In other words, if you say, I want I-35W north into Denton to be 18-lane freeway, like ultimately 35E will be, you have to present some type of plan to finance it. So anything we throw in there, whether you put in a rail right-of-way, there has to be a reasonable way to finance that thing before it goes into Metropolitan Transportation Plan. Contrary to that, if it's not on that plan, you don't get federal help. The good news is we fairly frequently amend that thing. So it's not totally indelible, but it's tight. So that 2040 plan's in place. I think our staff was, intensely involved in all of that. Every time we had to vote on something, I was down here spending quite a bit of time. The second piece of the RTC meeting was talking about the 85th legislature, the one coming up in 2017. And I want to tell you that I think it's going to be different. We're going to talk about probably in that legislative session next year, CDAs, a lot on the funding of transportation projects. Maybe public-private partnerships. There may be some toll road conversations. I will tell you there is a group, if you haven't already read it in the paper or heard it on the news, that's avidly against a lot of this. They're out to kill toll roads. They're out to kill high-speed rail. Not only toll roads, but managed lane projects, and they're pretty vocal. We face them quite a bit at RTC. But I think for those folks, and I have made public statements to this extent even in debates, if you get down to it, they really don't understand air quality issues that we face at RTC. If you, at some point in time, I want to kind of refresh your mind of what that's all about, but it's huge. What happened to us at RTC, we've been, since I started on it 12 years ago, I'm going to use a term which will be kind of abstract to some of you, but it's what we call bad ozone. It's stuff in the air. And for relativity, it was about 95 when I first started. We've worked all these years to get it down to 83. And I mean, we've spent money on truck stations where they're not idling engines and they have air conditioning. I mean, we spent a lot of money at RTC to do that, but we only got it down about 12 or 13 parts per billion. The feds have come down from 85, lowered the bar to 80, and now it's down to 70. So we have a spread. We're back up to a spread of some 13, 14 points. And it's big time. That's big money. So I've taken the time to explain to some of the elected officials over the last few years what that really means. Because that really, of all these folks that are fighting rail and those kinds of things, don't really understand those issues. Most of them don't understand what's happening in this region in population growth. We're adding 100+ thousand a year. That's 1 million every 10 years. More people on more roadways, and we got less money to build roadways. So all of this, rather than me sitting down and getting angry with somebody, I try to explain all that to them. And I think for the most part it works. I've done a lot of these, what I call Transportation 101, and Jim and I did one with a prospective legislator who didn't get in the legislature, but at least he's educated now very well on transportation a couple of months ago. I think Michael Morris made a statement the other day in some meeting we were in. Jim, I think you were there, out in Irving. He said, we cannot build our roadways out of this mess. So we just can't do it. So I say all that to say maybe that elevates transit in the next legislative session. I think if we develop the right collateral material, we can educate the folks that are going there. We've got a lot of new legislators coming in, and I think it's time that we start bubbling to the top. Anyhow, that was near and dear to the RTC discussions. Jim, do you have any others?
Couple of
thoughts
quick
about
items.
that?
Charles,
Yes.
I had one
Yes.
thing. You had a flow diagram that you presented, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. It's when we were in the old building. It was excellent, and maybe you board members, if you could resurrect that.
Yeah, let me just tell you where it last came out. Incidentally,
That
what
was
I
a
did.
fantastic.
I couldn't find this on my
understanding.
notes. Jim and I were asked to do a presentation, a couple of days ago, to
Tuesday?
to the Flower Mound leadership class. So took them up to downtown Denton Transit Center, kind of got them out of this area, took them up there, and went through all of that. A piece of it was that flow chart, and it is an educational piece that I think would be good for us, and I will do
Very
that.
useful.
I will do it. Any other questions? Okay, Jim?
2 items. First is budget transfers. There were several budget transfers included in the actions where you allocated, we created the new capital projects. There's one additional one that we did, which is really just, it's moving funds from the comprehensive service analysis, included some funding that the COG has asked us to use to fund the Highland Village service. It doesn't jeopardize our ability to deliver the comprehensive operational analysis, but it still had to be a transfer that was completed. It was $147,000. Again, that provides, we're able to use all of our federal money. We're just, in this particular case, we're using federal money in Highland Village. So that's the one additional budget transfer that we have. And one of the things, and Anna brought it up earlier, is when we transferred, we did a transfer within we created in the purchase transportation line we took the savings we had with HTSI and the savings from fuel and created contingency. And that's given us the opportunity to identify those funds to pay for things like these different studies, the lighting for the Stadler vehicles, and those items that are coming forward, some unexpected things. So we've been able to seize an opportunity of one-time expenses with some one-time savings, and we actually were able to cordon off $1.7 million out of operations from fuel and the rail operations savings. As we look to the future, when we start thinking about the 35W corridor and operating buses in that, and we look and see if part of what we hope to see out of the rail operations RFP that we have right now is that we can sustain some of those savings that we saw over the cash flow model, and could be very beneficial. So some really good news in that regard. But my promise to you was to keep bringing back to you when we do budget transfers. You've given me that authority. Part of my promise back to you was to tell you when I do those things. So we keep true to those numbers. From a regional transportation issues, Charles covered a great portion of that. I would ask that, again, a calendar issue is that we've been requested by the, part of the Rail Alliance to look at a joint board dinner. The one date that's a possibility looks like May 5th. If you could look at your calendars and give Rusty a heads up on that. We're not sure if the T is going to be able to make that or not, but we need to respond back to, Dart has actually got the lead on that this time, and so we'll see if that can work out. So if you could take that and take a look at it. I'm really pleased at how the staff is doing at pulling from across the board, whether it's with, finance operations, long-range planning, marketing, able to really make a difference in some of these regional things. So I'm quite proud of them and quite pleased with the effort that's coming forward. So it's manifesting itself in a number of ways that's been talked about today. So I don't want to let the day go by without saying that. So I'm quite pleased with that. On another note, I would ask Richard and Dave and Charles, if y'all could please, after the meeting, we got some stuff we need to sign today to bring closure to a few things. So in terms of wire transfers.
I've already signed the wire.
Got it. Okay, well, I just want to double check to make sure we're good to go on that.
You can have it when the agreement.
I'll sign the agreement. I'll take care of that. Not a problem. I also just want to thank you all for your support. Thank you. Oh, Charles, you may want to talk about legislative committee, April 12th. And who you'd like on that committee.
I haven't thought that through yet, but I'll just tell you that here in the next 3 or 4 weeks, probably bring back, as we do every other year, bring back in a legislative committee, and if you have an interest in serving on that, give me a call or send me a text, because it's going to be very different this time, but it's going to be important as ever. So give me a note if you want to serve on it. If not, I may be calling you.
Kind of thinking about the 12th of April, maybe being a good day to have that happen in the afternoon. So if you might.
I haven't even looked at my calendar yet, but it sounds good.
Oh, well, we're flexible.
So let's see, you got the dinner, when is that?
May 5th.
May 5th? What do you got in June for us, Jim? Anything?
I'm going to let that be a surprise, Charles.
Oh, your birthday? Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
we're twins.
Yes, we are.
Let me just make a closing comment. I think we've got the best balance of staff that we've ever had, quite frankly. I don't know, some of you engage one-on-one down here, but we have not only a balanced staff, but we have, I think, a staff that's intensely interested in advancing this organization, wherever they serve. And I see this at RTC, at DRMC, Jim is at TRTC now, but I think we're well represented in the region, and these folks are on top of it. I mean, I see a lot of things, ask a lot of questions, but I know they always have answers or they have opportunities to help. So I just wanted to express that to you all. I'm down here quite a bit, but I try to stay out of their hair as much as possible. But that's my findings, and I hope you're as happy with them as I am. So I'll just give them a hand right now. And then,
Thank you, Charles.
Yes.
Thank you.
We're down to number 8, I think, unless you have community interest points. Anybody?
I've just got one comment. This is, I'm sitting here thinking about this. I'm going back to this sidewalk lease agreement thing, and this is Jim asking you to coordinate with legal. But over time, things change and usage changes, and I guess what I would want to add to that one point for y'all to work with, or just be aware, that there's an expiration date on that usage, that it's not forever, that you grant an easement to that use of that sidewalk area. Because if we ever, for some reason in the future, wanted to take that area back, and it impedes us in some way, I think that is to protect us. So maybe it's a renewable ease. I don't know what the terms are, but that's just a point that kind of stuck in my head that I'd like to.
Okay.
But they may be stuck with just having a license if DA is not gonna allow us to convey that little clip. Because I think that's the only area that would fall into that concern. And so it's gonna have to be revocable over some reasonable period of time.
I just want us to always, as DCTA, to have control, full control of that area.
And with regards to the sidewalk, there's not an easement for that portion, it's just they're gonna build it.
Right. That was just an idea. I said maybe we
Whatever
could
the
give them an
agreements
easement for them to construct it, maintain it,
Right.
provide it, and all that, and so
That's
it's
all.
their baby, not ours.
That was just kind of on my mind. Thank you for allowing me to make that
Yep.
comment.
Duly noted.
Others? Okay, a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
I don't
All in
think I need
favor?
to call that question. It's 4:32, sir.
Really got it out of his mouth.
You hear 4:32?
It's efficient. I like it.
Rusty?